In today's video, we have a positive update regarding the release date of the Steam Machine and Steam Frame. After that, you might have heard that the latest update for Resident Evil 4 Remake made it run really bad on the Steam Deck and PC in general, but Capcom fixed it and I put it to the test. And finally, it looks like Sony is scaling back their single player games on PC, and I'm going to talk about whether or not I think that's a big deal. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is Deck Ready, my channel all about Steam hardware. I hope you are having a great week playing a ton of video games. When I'm recording this video, it's March 3rd, which is my birthday, and I spent March 2nd playing Resident Evil Requiem all night, and I ended up finishing it right at midnight, which was just such an awesome experience. This game I've been waiting for so long, like ever since Resident Evil 6, I've been waiting for a new game featuring Leon. I finally get it, and then I wrap it up on my birthday, and I absolutely loved this game from top to bottom. I'm gonna get 100% of the achievements. It ran beautifully, it played really great. I thought it was one of the stronger Resident Evil stories. Really nothing but great things to say about this game. I'm going to do the second playthrough on Steam Deck, so I'll let you know my settings once I figure that out. But yeah, ringing in my birthday, beating Resident Evil Requiem was an all-timer moment for me. I don't know what that says about, how exciting my life is, but I'm happy, so that's all that matters. But with the intro out of the way, let's get into the first news story here and talk about how, despite this whole RAM shortage and all this stuff that's going on, it looks like Valve is still hard at work on the Steam Frame and the Steam Machine, and fingers crossed, it looks like they're assuming they're going to hit that release window of before June in 2026. So the thing that's kind of given people some hopium, or more hopium than they've had in a little while, is that Gabe Follower, that great account on Twitter, was able to find that in the back end of Steam, they pushed the driver for the wireless adapter for the Steam Frame to public, which means that driver, if you can get to that link, is available to download, which it'll be like functionally useless for you if you don't have a Steam Frame because you don't have the wireless adapter. But this is a big change because developers have had the Steam Frame since the end of last year, so they've been able to get non-public release versions of the drivers. So if Valve is switching them to public, that means they're anticipating releasing this thing to the public, and I don't think they're going to release them separate. I know the wording in their initial delay was that the Steam Frame was the device kind of causing the delay. It wasn't actually the Steam Machine if you go off their wording, but I still don't think they're going to release these things separate. What I would prefer they release separate, though, is the Steam controller. I mean, I don't know how many Steam Machines they have done. I'm assuming it's a lot just based on the age of the hardware and how long they were working on this thing before they even announced it. So like if they have them all packaged up, it would kind of be a pain in the butt to take out all of these controllers from the packaging. But even with that in mind, I feel like they're still making standalone Steam controllers to sell by themselves. They should just release those and allow people to buy them. One criticism of that strategy is they'd be nervous that people wouldn't want to buy the Steam Machine, but I am like really anticipating, I feel very strongly that the launch of the Steam Machine is going to be in waves, kind of similar to the Steam Deck, but in some regards even worse. Like I think there's going to be way less Steam Machines at launch than there were Steam Decks, and they might even hold some back to release them in waves to people and do pre-order waves instead of like one big mass pre-order that opens up and continues on. Regardless, I feel like it's going to be tough for them to get their hands on the amount of these things that people simply want. So knowing that, getting less people excited to buy a Steam Machine at launch, they can wait for reviews, they can wait for gameplay, they can wait to see if it's worth it or not. That gets the heat off of the initial launch wave by letting them buy a Steam controller. So I feel like that's a big solve actually, and not really a problem for them that it would create. And like the Steam controller is technically a Steam Deck accessory as well. I don't really play the Steam Deck with a controller because it's a handheld with a built-in controller. I have a SteamOS PC. I have a Windows PC. So like if I'm sitting down and using a controller, I'm going to be on one of those and not my Steam Deck. But I do know there are a lot of people who use controllers. Like they put their Steam Deck on a stand, they boot up an emulated game like Pokemon Fire Red, for example, not mentioning that for any reason, and they kick back at a picnic table or at a coffee shop or something. So there is utility there. And also there are hard cases like the Kill Switch that have a kickstand. So like if you have a kickstand, you're probably more likely than someone like me who detests cases in all forms and begrudgingly uses the one that's included with the Steam Deck, right? Like you're probably okay using a controller with the Steam Deck. So they should just release the controller. I don't really care what it costs. It'll probably be somewhere between $70 and $100, but this thing is going to have a lot of utility for people people, whether they're on SteamOS, Windows, or whatever other PC operating system they get this thing up and running on. And another cool thing about that is my buddy Felix, who I mention all the time on the channel, he created deck filter and deck settings. He was setting up Bazite and he found the connection video, like the little iconography for the Steam controller with the puck and everything for first time setup. So those files are in there. They're clearly getting ready for this stuff to come out. They just have to nail down the release date and let us know. But there are, as you can see, positive signs that they're moving in the right direction. But going back to Resident Evil, let's talk about how Capcom actually fixed Resident Evil 4. If you missed this, they updated the anti-cheat in Resident Evil 4 Remake so that it used Enigma instead of Denuvo. I've never heard of Enigma. I don't like Denuvo, but I do have 30 FPS settings set up using Denuvo, so I was fine with that. Enigma just destroyed the performance for pretty much everyone. Like, even if you have a really high-end PC, there was a noticeable drop-off in performance. So when you move down to the Steam Deck, it's obviously even more noticeable, and it sucks that it came down to this new DRM anti-cheat situation on a single-player game just to stop piracy. So people obviously went ballistic, and rightfully so. Like, there's no excuse to reduce the performance of a game 2 years after it came out, or 3 years. This game came out in 2023, and that's good because Capcom actually listens. This is not the first time they've gone back and fixed a mistake. I wish they didn't make the mistakes in the first place, but credit where it's due, they did fix it. In January of 2025, they did an update for Monster Hunter Rise that added in an anti-cheat that broke the game completely on Steam Deck. It would just crash to the desktop. They had that fixed within 15 minutes, like before I could get a video out. And now with Resident Evil 4's DRM situation, not only did they remove Enigma, they did not add back in Denuvo. Right now it has no DRM, which is like how it should stay. I'm assuming they're going to figure out the licensing issues or like get a new license for Denuvo and add that back in. But like I mentioned at the top of the news story, I have settings that make it run at 30 FPS no matter what with Denuvo. So we're all good there. I've got the settings I use for 30 FPS on screen right now. It's basically the default settings that the game ships with, but I bumped textures up to high 2 gigabytes from 1 gigabyte. Other than that, it's pretty much the out of the box settings. It used to be way worse, but you know, they dialed it in and did an update that allows it to launch with the correct settings. So good job, Capcom. The one thing I have to point out with this game is that it's not actually possible to get a locked 30 FPS because of the scope situation. If you don't know what I'm talking about, essentially when you use a scope on a rifle, it double renders the game when you're ADSing, which means you're going to be at like 20 FPS immediately, and it makes it a little tough to play. Thankfully, you can take the scope off every rifle in this game, and that works in Mercenaries too. So whenever I start up a Mercenaries match, I just go into the inventory and take the scope off the rifle. Unfortunately, there is one level where you need to use the thermal scope to see where to shoot the regenerators, and it's even worse because you're adding an effect to the double rendering. So for one level of the game, when you ADS, it's going to be at around 20 to 22 FPS. Other than that, it's a basically locked 30 FPS, which is good because this game looks phenomenal. So yeah, I'm glad Capcom fixed it. It's going to be a bummer if they add Denuvo back in, but like, I don't know. I've lived with it before, so I can live with it again. It hasn't really gotten in my way. I just know everyone hates it. So obviously I'd prefer they just leave it out, but don't bring back Enigma. I hope they don't use it in the future because that performance trade-off is just ridiculous. And then finally, I just wanted to round out the video really quick talking about the PC port situation with Sony. Like, they've been spending the past 2 years porting basically the entire PlayStation 5 library over to Steam. And now it looks like quietly last year, they decided that unless a game is like a second party game, like Death Stranding 2, for example, or a live service multiplayer game like Marathon or Horizon Hunters Gathering, it's not going to come to PC, or if it does, it's going to take a very long time. And if you look at their financials, it becomes pretty clear why. PC sales make up like 1.5% of their total revenue from gaming, and most of that is Helldivers 2, which would still come to PC under the new arrangement. So like if you remove Helldivers, it's less than 1% probably of their revenue. And it makes more sense if you look at how these games sell on PC. Like the first couple, Horizon Zero Dawn and God of War 2018, those sold really well, so they immediately started porting more games. And then as they released them, they just did worse and worse to the point where a few of them didn't even crack 1 million units, which for a company like Sony, I can see why they'd be hesitant to start porting stuff day and date, which would probably get them more sales on PC, because playing a 2-year-old game for basically full price probably isn't enticing to a lot of people. I still don't think it would be tens of millions of units or anywhere close to what's being sold on PlayStation, because a lot of their first party stuff this generation just hasn't really been for the audience, if we're being real. And that's clear because once it comes to PC, it just doesn't really resonate with the PC crowd all that much. So like, if the games aren't selling all that well anyway, outside of a few standouts, I mean, I don't think anyone's even going to notice if like Ghost of Yotei doesn't come to PC. So like, it's a bummer if you were like looking at a PS5 and you decided to build a PC, assuming that eventually they'd get to day and date. But like, outside of multiplayer live service games, they've never been day and date with PC. So I don't even know what situation you'd have to be in to replace your PlayStation 5 if you're really invested in Sony first party games with a gaming PC. So it's like a little bit of a bummer. I just personally don't really care. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about it down in the comments, but like, I think we're going to be just fine because there's plenty of great games that come to PC. And if you look at Sony's first party output, they've had some cool stuff this generation, like Returnal, Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, and Spider-Man 2. 3 out of 4 of those are on PC. So like, you know, it's not really that big of a deal to me, if we're being honest. And a lot of people think the downfall of Xbox started when they started going day and date on PC. So if Sony wants to keep their console business alive, let them, right? Like, there's plenty of stuff to play on PC, and I have a PlayStation 5, so I'll be just fine either way. But yeah, that brings me to the end of the video. I like to keep my birthdays low key as of late, so I'm gonna go to Texas Roadhouse with my best friend and my wife, and I'm gonna have a huge steak, and then I'm gonna come home and probably play some Arc Raiders with my buddies. But yeah, I mean, having this channel and having people show up to watch my videos about the Steam Deck, that's the best birthday gift of all. I know it sounds so corny, but like, I wake up pretty happy every day, excited that I get to do this, and it's all because of you guys, so I really appreciate it. I hope you're having a great day. March 3rd should be a good day for everybody, not just me. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.